me see which direction I'm in. I'm in the right direction. I think that I had to do this like 3 times because I'm trying to find a proper way to explain the non-bloodline versus the bloodline versus the universe putting somebody in place to kind of keep the reminder. This is kind of based off of personal experience. Hold on, because I'm driving around. It's based off of personal experience. So first off, let's get this clear. Personally, I only respect the bloodline. I do not respect the non-bloodline. Secondly, there's this old saying that blood is thicker than water. Sometimes they say that it is, sometimes they say that it's not. When it comes to particular situations, though, there will be confusion put in place that will take from the natural bloodline. So the universe is going to put people, places, and things in place to make sure that the actual bloodline receives what the actual bloodline is supposed to receive. Meanwhile, back at the ranch, the bloodline has to respect that, and so always has to support that. Now I'm saying this again based off of personal experience because in my experience, I was always placed around natural bloodline before anything else. And I know that animosity grows between bloodlines and so on and so forth, and that's cool. But when it's all said and done, the bloodline still has to, the actual bloodline has to still be stood for. Now, people might think this is not fair or not valid, but it really is. It really is, because the universe wouldn't put said people in place if it wasn't. And this is how certain quote unquote non-bloodlines or questionable bloodlines always get their blessings, because they always gotta make sure actual bloodlines stand in place. People do not see this as important. You can have an individual's last name and you still not bloodline and you still not valid. Let's speak about marriage. You can marry into a particular family. You're not bloodline. You did not reproduce. You're not valid. You're simply not valid. You're just not valid. It doesn't matter. Whether that individual wants you to be valid or not, you're still not valid. You married into the bloodline. You could not reproduce with the bloodline. The universe said that you're not valid. You're not valid. Real recognize real. It's real simple. And this is how families, wealth, and riches are taken advantage of. You're not going to marry me at 80-something years old, or 75 years old, or 65 years old, or 90 years old, and still think that you're not valid. You're not. You can't even reproduce with me, shorty. You're not valid. Like, I don't understand it. It just doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense. And when you get to these ages of 75, 80, 85, 90, you know, in certain situations or circumstances, you can be manipulated. You're not valid. It's just that simple. I don't have to say, I don't have to really speak deeply on the situation of who I'm speaking about. Those who are aware are aware. Like, no, you're still not valid. You're not going to. All right, I'm gonna use myself as example. You're not going to marry me at 75, cannot reproduce with me at 75, and still state that you're valid because you have my last name. No, because this is what takes the validity out of the last name altogether. This is what gives people with no validity power to conglomerate with people who have validity, who have the last name, and walk away with the riches of the people that have the last name. Like, people don't think. And so the imposters that run around with the last name, and some of them do not even realize that they are imposters, so it's not intentional, but you're an imposter. You have the last name and genetically you're not even related to Holmes. There's people that do not have the last name and that's genetically related to Holmes. Like, people have to think about these things. And I'm not talking about any particular group of people, but I'm just saying that there's people that know me, that know particular groups of people. Bitch, you're not valid. You have the last name and you still not valid. You was born and you still not valid and have the last name. How the fuck does that work? Pound, I still stand on the genetic factor. That's important. And this is why the universe puts certain people, places, and things in place to remind the non-valid that they're not valid. Now, there's non-valid that are conglomerate with the valid to cover up, to make themselves still be valid. No, you're still not valid. Did you marry into this situation when Holmes was 75, 85 years old? Bitch, you not valid in real life. Not in fake life, in real life. This is things that people have to think about when we passing on generational wealth. Generational wealth, health, stability. Is a lot of non-valids that are stand in place. They will literally stand in place and try to kind of morph into that. You're not valid. And most people that's of color that have wealth do not think like that. Or whose names have wealth, they do not think like that. I don't care what I'm going through, how I'm feeling, whether I like you, whether at the end of the day, it's still going to be the bloodline, whether I like you or not, whether I agree with you or not, period. Because the whole concept is to keep the bloodline clear, pure, and wealthy and rich. All these imposters, you know, you're adopted, you had a child, you have the same last name. Bitch, you're genetically not valid. You're just not. Whether you like it or not, you can sit there and roll in the clay of life in the last name, but you're still not valid. Now, does the emotion and love still count? Of course it does. But genetically, your ass ain't valid. There's a lot of genetically invalid individuals that feel like they valid. And there's a lot of genetically invalid individuals that are not trying to claim to be valid, but still will validate respectfully those who are genetically valid. And this is how the universe play the games. This is how the universe play the games. And this is how a lot of imposters end up in wealthy situations where they don't fucking belong. And be in that energy where they feel like they belong but you don't. And this is why I will forever be blessed. My Ashe will forever be a billion. No matter what. Even if you manipulate the elder, you still cannot take my Ashe. Period. You still cannot take my blessings. You still cannot take my health. You still cannot take my wealth. None of that. Because in my reality and all that's associated with my reality, I still know who's valid and who's not, whether they have the last name or not. And so therefore, you don't hold no weight against me. Because the universe is not going to allow me to have access to that information or know those things if it wasn't to be disputed. And that's what people have to think about. And I don't even have to dispute it. Reality is going to dispute it, regardless whether I'm there or not, whether I'm cool or not. A lot of y'all disputed. A lot of these grandchildren out here, y'all bitches is disputed in real life. I can't be played with. A lot of y'all disputed. It's some of y'all asses that's born into existence that don't even know y'all don't really exist. Y'all should be disputed in real life. Y'all can screencast that, record it, whatever y'all want to do. But in my own personal experience, you know, my position may be questionable, but how can it be questionable if I know all the bloodline and you're not the bloodline? Let's just think about it. I know all the bloodline. You're not the bloodline. I'm going to say that 3 times. I know all the bloodline. You're not the bloodline. The universe put me in place to know all the bloodline, but you're not the bloodline. So how you going to dispute me? You're not. Because she's not the bloodline either, and she can be disputed in real life. Deuces.